Hello sirs, I'm GM Andrea from Chess Strategies 1. Today we will see a tricky move order to face the Caro-Kann defense. But first, let me remind you to like, share and subscribe the channel Chess Strategies 1. So after e4, c6, we have the Caro-Kann defense, which is a very solid defense that black players can use to play against the e4 players. Now the main line is d4, d5, knight c3, pawn takes e4, knight takes e4. And now black's idea in the opening is that before pushing the pawn on e6, black develops the lights for bishop outside his pawn structure. This bishop will be very active, and this is the classical line, the main line by far, where there is a very big amount of theory, and black is known to be fine. Here white usually fights against this bishop, then bishop g6, then white plays h4 with the idea to trap the bishop, but then black can play h6. White can try to play knight f3 with the idea to disturb the bishop by playing knight e5 with pressure against the bishop on g6, but then black has time to cover the e5 square with his knight. Now the game usually continues with a h5, bishop h7, and white could not get rid of this very strong bishop. And actually here white is forced, well, white is not forced, but white should, this is the main line, white should trade his good bishop, the light square bishop, reaching a position where black can play plans with a short castle or even with long castle. And this opening, this variation, have been played for many years. Even in the last century, it was played a lot. It is still popular now. It's very difficult for white to fight for the advantage, because you know, if for example, let's say white didn't play the Caro-Kann, because this is the Caro-Kann, no? Let's say black played the French defense after d4, d5, knight c3. Now after d takes c4, which is actually a dubious move, knight takes c4, then black has problems with his f5 bishop that cannot be developed. This will be a long-term problem for black. But in the Caro-Kann, black solves this issue. So what to do with white? Well, we might study this main line, study a lot of theory, but I will recommend you a tricky move order. I first I studied this move order for the first time when I was very young, when I was a child, in the notes of a game commented by Bobby Fischer in his wonderful book 60 Memorable Games. And in that game, Fischer against e4 c6 played the knight c3, d5 and knight f3. So it is a tricky variation. We can call it the two knights variation against the Caro-Kann. And it's very interesting because, okay, black can try to equalize. Actually, this is one of the main lines nowadays. Maybe black should try to play something different, maybe bishop g4. But black's method to fight for the equality is different than after the main line. Because a player who recently studied the Caro-Kann might try to face the two lines, the two knights variation as the main line. I mean, by playing bishop f5. So after knight c3, d5, knight f3, d takes c4, Many players will play this line with bishop f5, and after knight g3, then bishop g6. So I think that I really think that this is a mistake. So black tries to play in the standard way, so one may think that there is nothing wrong in what black did till now, but white can already get a clear advantage here. So white can start persecuting this bishop. h4. Knight e5 was premature because knight e5 is not a very strong threat, because after knight d7, okay, white should decide what to do with the knight, and after knight takes, h takes, then black, it's true that white wins the bishop pair, but black takes recapture towards the center. His black's pawn structure is compact, and black has the open file for his rook. So white should rather play h4. Now white's idea is to play h5. Black might play knight d7 as well, but then the black's bishop has no mobility, and after h5 the bishop is lost. There are not available squares, because the knight is ready to take the bishop wherever it goes. So black should try to create a retreat for the bishop by playing h6 or h5. Well, h5 is the same. h5 is very, very bad also, because you play knight e5 with the idea to take here, and the bishop is bound. The bishop is tied up at the defense of the h5 pawn. Anyway, after h6, now we, in comparison with the other variation, where we had the pawn on d4 and we had the knight on g1, now the knight is ready to jump to the e5 square, which wasn't yet covered by the black knight, and the bishop is trapped. The bishop is threatened. If knight d7, then we can take, and now this pawn structure is awful. This pawn structure is totally different than the previous one I mentioned. So this pawn structure is good for black. This is horrible. Then we would play d4, then bishop d3, queen g4, the g6 pawn is weak. The white squares around the black's king are weak as well. So here white would have an overwhelming advantage. This is very, very bad for black. So black should try to save the bishop, but then queen h5 follows. Queen h5 is a very, very strong move, because now the pawn on f7 is threatened, and black is in trouble already. Black is already in trouble here, because queen d5 is met with bishop c4. There is no reasonable way to protect the pawn on f7. So black should play g6, and now black's position is ridiculous. The bishop now is close by his own pawn, by the black pawn. Maybe it was even better to leave the bishop on h7 rather than developing it in h7. And here, white, okay, a very strong move, another very strong move is queen f3, as modern engines say. But yes, many engines state that queen f3 is a very strong move, but I like the wonderful bishop c4 move. Now it seems that the queen is hanging, but if black takes the queen, then bishop f7 mate follows, and the king cannot escape to f7 because the knight, yes, the knight also protects the bishop, but also controls e7. And so black is forced to play e6, after which queen e2 follows, and white has a very big and clear advantage. The bishop on h7 is a horrible piece, and black should play some horrible moves such as queen e7. It's funny that if black plays in the wrong way, black might lose on the spot. For example, after knight d7, then white would win with a wonderful sacrifice, which is knight takes f7. Knight takes f7 with a double attack. If black moves the queen somewhere, white will take the rook with a winning material advantage. And after king takes, then queen takes e6 follows, king g7, and queen f7, checkmate. So this would be a wonderful ending. And if you want to play a tricky move order to confuse your opponent that like to play in the classical way, in the Caro-Kann, try to play the two knights variation. Black should play in different ways, in less standard ways. And if black plays in the classical style, with bishop f5 and bishop g6, with h4, h6, and knight e5, followed by queen h5, etc., you are already winning. So I hope you will have the opportunity to play this trick and to get an advantage against the Caro-Kann. And let's meet in the next videos. Bye bye. Thank you very much.